Stuff's getting better. Stuff's getting better all the time. Welcome back to Bad Movies Rule, a podcast that can look at an overly long 3-hour vanity project and find out what's awesome about it. We're talking about The Postman.
We're supposed to find out what's awesome about it?
Good morning, James.
Hopefully, good morning. By the end of this, we'll have all learned together what's awesome about it. That's the goal.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. You can hear Charles Hewitt is back with us for the first time since Mystery Men.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah?
Glad I didn't sync your podcast last time I was on.
All right, you're out of your timeout now.
No.
It's been a couple months. Let's see if you can't do a little bit better.
See, but I already screwed up the beginning, so I'm now.
No, that wasn't at all. We already all know how you feel about it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I'm conflicted.
Okay. Well, hopefully by the end, good or bad, your feelings will be clear.
Good.
And joining us, as always, in his normal seat is Clint Bush. Clint, how are you doing?
Good.
How's the track?
Good.
Clint runs the track. Is that what it's called?
It is called The Track
It's on
at
his
Burlington.
shirt.
That's right. I just realized it's on his shirt.
I saw him a few weeks ago working on it. That looked like hard work.
That was hard work.
Yeah.
Just redid the whole thing, the whole layout, right?
Yeah, full till down to nothing. We have a dirt track inside, and occasionally we revamp it to fresh and new again. Change the jumps up, give people another challenge.
You don't want it to get stale.
No, of course not. Plus, as the dirt dries out, cracks up, and stuff like that, traction goes away. So it kind of helps us to get back to an even traction level.
Yeah.
Well, if you like racing RC cars, go see him at the track at Burlington Hobbies.
It's a great hobby store.
In Burlington, Wisconsin.
Go Burlington.
And then
hobbies.
Joining us for the first time ever, Ryan Mueller. Ryan is the host of his own podcast, Living with Liberty, which you can find anywhere podcasts are found.
I bet you'll find it the same places that Bad Movies Rule are.
Perfect. So definitely check that out. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Awesome.
I think ready to do this. It's a little bit different than what I do, so I'm excited. I like to do kind of these
Kind of the same general.
snarky type of things.
How does society function or not function, and what would happen?
I get into that on mine and what's the dysfunction of society.
You talk about the
We talk about dysfunction in movies here. I talk about dysfunction of society.
Well, this movie is about the dysfunction of society, so this works out.
And as I'm doing it, I'm like, man, you know what? We might not be that far off from going back to 1850s style clothing and Pony Express.
Well, hey, this happened in 2013.
It did.
That's right.
This is only 7 years ago.
Maybe we're living in alternate reality.
See, but here's the difference between this and Back to the Future. The Cubs actually won the World Series when Back to the Future
that's true.
says.
This is true.
That one right.
This is true.
So Back to the Future gets a tick in the plus column.
It does.
Postman goes down. Right
Well, if we're comparing those two movies, this is going to be a short podcast. Well, let's get the vitals out of the way so everyone knows kind of what's up with this movie. This was directed by Kevin Costner, who at this point had become famous for directing and starring in his own movies. And the first one was a huge success, which probably was what gave him the feeling he could go back to the well again. And first one being Dances with Wolves.
I thought you were going to say Waterworld.
No, the first one was Dancing with Wolves. I said the one that was successful.
Waterworld's awesome. I love Waterworld.
And which we'll be talking about soon at some point.
I want to be back on that podcast.
And then so it's funny because you say Waterworld because this is just a year or two after that.
It's amazing they let him make this movie 2 years after Waterworld.
But I think the reason that happened is because right in between Waterworld and this was actually a great movie, Tin Cup, which is one of his best films, I think.
Yep.
I never saw that one.
So maybe they thought he had shaken off the stench.
You've replaced watching Tin Cup with the 37th viewing of Mystery Men. Seriously?
Mystery Men's awesome. I love
Unbelievable.
Mystery Men's one of the best movies ever.
This movie was written. The pedigree of the people that worked in this movie is good. Written by Eric Roth, who wrote Forrest Gump and many other incredible movies like the remake Star Is Born with Bradley Cooper. And it was also co-written by Brian Helgeland, one of my favorite screenwriters. This is the guy that wrote L.A. Confidential. And right after this, he followed it up with Payback in 1989, that Mel Gibson movie, A Knight's Tale in 2001. Just a row of great movies.
Let's just watch all the stuff he's been in.
Is A Knight's Tale a good
he's
movie?
done.
What's that?
Is A Knight's Tale a good movie?
How dare you?
That is a fantastic movie.
That's Heath Ledger, isn't it?
Yeah.
I never saw that one.
It was
It
was
makes
great.
me feel
Unbelievable.
inferior. So
If anyone ever tried to talk about that movie on this podcast, I'd walk out the door in protest. And this movie starred, as we said, Kevin Costner and the man, Will Patton, who we've been...
Patton.
There goes my Will Patton award winner.
No. See, he's not eligible, man. There's
How's
no
that?
way.
I don't know. I feel like the universe doesn't
Not this
work
time
if
around.
Will
No.
Patton can't win his own award.
Well,
How does this
based on our criteria, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. And then Olivia Williams and Lorenz Tate are the other two. Lorenz as Ford Lincoln Mercury.
What a great name, by the way.
Yes.
Right. Well, he named himself.
Yeah,
He was
Yeah,
Johnny.
His name was Chris.
His name was Johnny.
Right.
And that got me. He said, I wanted to drive. I'm like, dude, do you even know about cars? You're like 15 in this movie.
Right. So he's never seen one move, I'm assuming. He
Right.
just sees them sitting there, rotting
I
out.
think that brings up a lot of interesting discussions for later on in the podcast.
Okay,
so.
we'll do that. This movie, and here's kind of how it ended up on our podcast. It had an $85 million budget in 1997, which would be well over $100 million today. That's a lot of money. And it grossed, in its entire theatrical run, $20 million bucks.
That is gross. I would have to say that some of that is too. Who is going to sit there
Bad.
and watch a 3-hour movie in the theater from a guy that I'm saying I've seen
saw
it
in the theater.
I saw it in the theater. I watched Titanic twice.
You're welcome,
in the
Kevin
theater,
Costner.
you know. But yeah, a lot of people
Right.
I don't think are signing up for a 3-hour. Oh man, this is going to be Waterworld.
Well, and it hurts the turnaround time, too. Movie theaters hate long movies because they only show them a certain number of times in a day, which hurts
Sure.
how many tickets you can sell, too, because they can't do as many showings. But it did not do well. And I don't think it was just because of that. I think just the marketing was terrible.
Well, let's just say if you're going to have a 3-hour movie, it better be pretty good.
Yeah.
And this one, I'm not quite sure.
Well, let's start with you then, because the first thing I want to do is just get each of your general impressions, your overall thoughts about the movie itself.
Okay, so this is going to seem weird, but it's been going through my head since I watched this again. And I saw this at the theater, and I've seen it a few years. It's the best of movies. It's the worst of movies. It's the best of time. It's the worst of time. Now, I don't know. There's parts of it that are like, it's amazing this movie got made. Mm-hmm. Like the quality of it is, there's no better quality of filming and production of any other film you'll see.
Yeah.
And yet the story is highly confusing.
Not at all. This is as clear.
I mean, I just don't quite. I understand what's going on, but I don't understand what's going on. So this is this sort of like I'm just stuck in this sort of loop of what in the world is my scene and what's happening and why is it?
I think some of that is because you don't understand the time that has passed. Some of it doesn't really make sense. So like those opening scenes where he becomes an army of 8 or whatever. Inductee,
a Holnist,
an inductee. Till he escapes that life and then comes back as the postman. How long has passed
That's a very good question.
at that point? So there is the first glimpse of time, because when he meets him, he's like, do I know you?
There's all kinds of that, I think, in this movie.
Yeah.
Just really how long
Do we ever see him get
was
his...
that there? Because it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the movie that seems like this should be a long time apart all happens within the span of she's still pregnant.
Yeah.
Well, that's what got me, and I don't know if we want to get into that, but that's the one thing I'm like, she's been pregnant for like 16 months by my count right here.
Right. Yeah.
There are things that this movie decides to devote a lot of screen time to, and then that maybe don't need it, and then things that are important details that it just glosses
I
over.
wonder, like the last half hour that I watched today, if some people sort of sheepishly came up to Kevin Costner and said, we're kind of out of money now and we need to finish the movie. So how exactly, what's your plan here?
So the entire recruitment
scene? The
scene?
whole recruitment scene is on him as he's gliding down this giant thing, which was awesome.
This thing's got to wrap up. We're coming on the 3-hour mark.
I think that's...
You used all your screen budget on those opening panoramic shots going up the mountain and you standing there with your donkey.
So what are Ryan, your overall thoughts on the movie?
You know, I think it's AOC would have loved it. You're saving the post office, riding a horse, no carbon emissions, and people are sending letters again. I think she would have loved it.
She probably loves it if she's seen it.
I doubt it.
Although don't farm animals emit a lot of emissions?
I don't know.
Well,
yeah, we got to stop eating meat because cows fart.
That's right. I'm sure horses
do too. I mean, I think it's like a 3-hour. This could have been one of those that was a franchise, right? I kind of look at it as like 3 different movies. You got the first hour where he's wandering. It opens in the Great Salt Flats, and I'm like, why are there boats there? Right. They raced cars and motorcycles on the Great Salt Flats. There's boats laying here. He's
Stuff has
wandering around.
changed.
Right.
That's right.
Right. People just need to dump their boats or something.
right.
I don't know. But so I think that's the first part, and where he's getting up into the recruitment. He gets
His capture.
his capture
And his escape.
And then you have the second part where he's kind of in there.
He's conning.
the army.
Yeah.
And then third part's almost like where he's running away, falls through into the river and is gone, right? So it's like 3 movies. I mean, this could have been like a 3-part miniseries on Hallmark Channel or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if it was made now, it probably is a 6-episode TV or a Netflix series,
Right.
but that just wasn't happening. And then TV was like
absolutely.
the redheaded stepchild to film.
Yep.
And it's, now we're in the golden age of television. And so,
But otherwise, I think for what was it, 95 or 97?
97.
I mean, the quality of the filming was great for 97. If you go back and compare some of the other movies from that time period, and you're like, the effects are garbage. They're obviously, fake.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't too bad. The only one I think is when he's in Tom Petty's little trolley heading down. I mean, that was obviously kind of, they ran out of money maybe on that one. But I think it was, I'd give it maybe the okayest Kevin Costner movie ever. It's not great. I kind of thought, well, it's maybe like Waterworld in the Old West or something. I don't know, but
I hear you. I definitely agree with you. I don't think the fault of this movie is in its filmmaking. I don't think anyone can question it.
That was pretty good.
Some of the movies you talk about are just terrible because you can see the seams in everything and sometimes the boom mics and everything they're doing, but that's not the case here. What were your thoughts of the movie, Clint?
Man, we watched this movie. This came out. We graduated high school. This movie was on. I mean, we had a busy time going on, all of us. So I watched it. It was kind of slowish, and it just kept going and stuff. And I don't think I was paying attention as much as I should have been in the theater at the time, due to other goings on. But ultimately, what it comes down to is I watched this movie again now. I watched it then. I watched it never again.
Right.
And now I've watched it now. Mm-hmm. And as a 42-year-old guy sitting here on the couch watching this movie, I loved every single thing about this movie. And it's crazy and it's weird and it doesn't make sense because I went in to be like, seriously, like, I remember good parts of this movie, but the rest of it was just kind of nothing I ever wanted to watch again. And honestly, I will watch this again in the next 6 months. I'm sure of it.
All right.
I own it now, so I guess
I got it free on Tubi.
There you go.
And on Tubi, you get commercial breaks. And I remember at least once I was about to hit the pause button to go and take a leak. And like, ad starting in 9. I'm like, yes, commercials to the rescue.
I can go get some pretzels now.
I decided to pay the $4 more just to buy it.
Might as well. And there's
$4, that's a purchase for sure.
For me, there's no hiding the fact that I absolutely love this movie. I had the VHS copy of it when it came out in the late 90s. It's not perfect. It's overly long. It could definitely be cut down.
2 hours,
parts.
20 minutes. Let's make this thing.
But I do adore the movie, even with some of its warts, which I will acknowledge.
I think I liked this movie more before I saw it again.
Oh, so the second viewing, instead of the opposite of what happened with Clint.
Yeah, this is probably my third or fourth viewing, and I'm like, I got to actually critically evaluate this now. This is not what I remember it being completely. So.
Yeah. See, and I went the other way. I hadn't seen this one up until a couple weeks ago. I watched it for the first time. Then I watched it again last night, and I'm like, I kind of like it a little better now.
See?
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, let's dive into it. And funny enough, you mentioned that. I also divided this movie into 3 sections, a little bit differently, but essentially the same, right? With the first hour of the movie basically being
45 minutes.
His life and his capture and going through his life in this army with the Holnists. The second act being his initial con of being the postman, right? All the way up until he's shot.
Right.
And then in the winter forever. And then the third hour is basically him being like the postman rides, like we're doing. This is a movement, right?
Right.
And so our discussion is going to be kind of split into those same 3 sections today. So we'll start with that first hour where he's captured and put into this army. Before that, I have questions. How did this happen?
Yes,
is it clear?
That's a fundamental question.
There is missing a title screen with 500 words. All right. That is what is missing.
Yeah.
Well, you got a really nice over-the-top prose introduction.
Sure.
That's true.
100%. But
yeah,
legitimately, there had to have been some type of civil war here in the United States of America, but it had to have affected the whole world.
They alluded to it.
Whatever happened.
Right, they said Europe.
There was like a
How is Europe doing?
4-year winter, 3-year winter.
Three
like
years
Game of
winter, the
Thrones
plagues. We had a whole bunch of goings on here.
There's different references to biological weapons.
Exactly. So there was a
Right.
big world type war
Something
that also
horrible
split
happened.
the country of its own.
Right.
So yeah, something huge had happened, but they don't really give us all the details on that. And honestly, I don't think it matters.
Well, I don't think so. And then you had some farmer guy too, Nathan Holm, who was some sort of activist or something that all you have is his book. It's like, okay, what part does...
Was that the book he read from?
I think so. And this is what and I know later on they said farmer, which confused me because as soon as I saw that book, which was called Seizing the Way to Win.
Yeah, it looked like a Trump book.
It looked like a, here it is, Seizing the Way to Win for $5.95. I had a little price tag on it. And I was like, hold on, was Nathan Holmes just some crappy self-help author? And he rallied an army?
Well, here's the thing. That could totally be true because Kevin Costner was a con man playing a postman because he found the uniform and he's trying to get himself some free meals. And then he gets shot and he started a movement with his 3 days of, goings on.
Will Patton was what? He was like a copier salesman or something, right?
Yeah.
Or General Bethlehem.
Which foreshadowed to the end, not to skip all the way to the end, but just for that one line of dialogue where they basically both acknowledge that there are a couple of frauds.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
And so were the Holnists directly involved in the downfall of society, or did they rise up afterwards to fill a power vacuum?
Yeah, I came to believe that they were the guys who grabbed whatever was left of the working equipment. They were in the military at the time. There had to be some kind of draft because this guy went and was military and was trained out and ended up being more than his parts as a copy repairman.
Right. Yeah, there had to be something. I mean, he just...
But there was that one town lady who asked about the Holnist people and the movement, and like she didn't know what had happened exactly.
Right. Or if Nathan Holm was still alive.
Right.
And but you're right. But also Bethlehem says he was at the Battle of Georgetown and saw the White House burn.
You make the assumption he's in the some sort of army or military,
right? Or they were burning the White House down,
and probably some exactly. Or he, and some of his army was, or whatever.
That Holnist army was overly racist out there, directly. So it leads to a civil war in turn. Idea.
I don't know. But it's all these are some of the points that the movie doesn't see fit to spend a lot of time on.
Budget.
The other huge issue is timing factor. When did all this happen?
I bet you they shot 5 hours of this movie, and this is the cut.
I think he's 40. He's 40 years old at the time because we find out later.
Yeah, he was born in 73.
He was born in 73, and then 30 years until he died. And so, like you said, this is supposedly takes place in 2013.
Yeah,
which means civilization fell, they said, when he was a young man. So I don't know, or he was a kid.
It's like 15 years or something, right? It was like 98 to 2000, somewhere in there is what I gathered from the timeline.
Right. Yeah. So the world's been, by the time we come up to the Postman now, the world's been like this for 10, 15 years. Essentially.
Ish. A decade for sure.
Yeah. But again, it's not really clear. I did look so there's a novel this is based on. The novel was written by David Brin. In the novel, they kind of talk about all the same stuff, but they also mentioned that a number of EMPs were set off, which was the main thing that killed everybody's
all the electronic
technology,
stuff.
essentially.
Right.
Yeah. But again, not a lot of information as to who or why or what.
In the gas station, there was a cigarette machine that looked pretty old, so that was probably 80s.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's probably still some of those.
You had those rolling around in the late 90s.
There's probably one of those out there now if you go to
the right bar. There's some out there still.
Moose Lodge in Antioch. There you go.
We can't use that archaeological evidence to date exactly. Okay.
No.
EMPs do not affect the cigarette machines, obviously.
And he was rich apparently when he found the cigarettes, but you never see him do anything else.
Right. He never bartered with them or anything. He
didn't have a lot of time because he did a show.
Maybe he smoked them all in the mail truck or something.
Well, he smoked them all on the roof of the...
Yeah, he did smoke a couple up.
Oh, he did? Yeah, that's right. He did have a couple there too, yeah.
But we essentially come into this world now where nature is starting to bounce back, right? The birds are migrating again.
Nature's beautiful.
Yeah. Rain is coming. I guess it hasn't rained for a long time.
Sure.
There's a lion.
How are there any animals left if it hasn't rained for what they say, 3 years?
It escaped out of the zoo.
Yeah.
I am glad they described that because my first thing was, why is there a lion
in Oregon?
I understand he was North America somewhere, right? And
that lion
there was a zoo there.
He's assisting on the 8 Army there is what he's doing.
Yeah.
It was an important plot
Yes.
motivation device here.
So and you guys correct me if you think I'm wrong, but basically the world is functionless because their technology's been destroyed. The biggest thing is that they can't organize or rebuild because everyone's cut off from each other. There's no way of communicating.
Well, I would say that beyond that, the problem is that this army is coming through from town to town, and they're running the roads, and they're stealing supplies from the towns and civilizations.
So you can't even set up a supply line.
So you couldn't even try to trade back and forth.
He did view himself as a feudal lord.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was the vassal. He was the king, and they were the vassals.
So do you think that this is just one of many armies or gangs? Or
Has to be.
It's like
there's not only one. They're only in Oregon, right?
Well, yeah. This whole thing goes in Oregon, and when at the end, again, we're jumping around a bunch because we've all seen it. So to you who haven't, sorry, you've had enough time. But like legitimately, he's from the post office from the Republic of California that they're starting back up again. So now this guy is way out of his jurisdiction at that
much
point.
to his detriment.
Yes, unfortunately.
So I think what you've got is territorial armies, right?
Right. You've got to have territorial armies, and you do have to have some people that are moving from town to town and wandering around, because how did that information from the Postman get all the way to California?
Right.
And I remember you mentioned to me, Charles, when we were talking about this earlier, that you were watching this with your wife, and she was very confused as to what Bethlehem wanted,
Bethlehem's motives,
or what this army wanted, or what they were doing, right? And I really was thinking about that, and especially if there's multiple militias and armies and gangs and groups like this around the country, I got to imagine that whenever there's a power vacuum, these types of groups are going to come together. Everybody's like, even now, want to be part of a gang, a clan, a group. You know.
Well, and you would think though too, because how many towns did they go into and they were walled off, right? Like the old time,
they knew
hey, this is our
to protect
town.
themselves.
We're blocking in this, town square or whatever, and that's it. So there had to have been maybe not even this main army, but other raiding Viking-like armies from other places.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we finally see the Holnists, which are named for Nathan Holn, who founded this army, show up, and our main character, which we never get his name, I don't think, in the movie, right? I think one time he almost says it, but she tells him not to. Do we ever get his actual name?
The Postman?
The Postman.
He's never.
All right, so we'll just refer to him as the Postman or Costner then.
And the body something.
Body father.
He's the body father, yeah.
Costner is performing Shakespeare, to feed himself, essentially, right?
Basically, the roaming thespian. And he, with Bill, his mule, and he gets drafted, I guess it's a nice way to say it, into the Holnist army. They just kind of pluck guys. Bill does a fantastic job, by the way.
Can I give Bill an award?
I'm so sad about Bill. I literally wrote down justice for Bill on my sheet of paper.
That was brutal.
About Bill too. I'm like,
that
Bill
sucks. Because
that's the worst thing the Holnist did in the whole movie.
It really is. Yeah,
Kevin
really is.
Costner has been legitimately with this mule long enough to have trained this thing to perform Shakespeare with him. Yeah. I mean, the thing sword fights with him. That's awesome.
It is. And it's bad enough that they kill his pet, but then they feed it to him.
Yeah.
Well, that whole thing, I thought, what are they? That looks like concrete, because they had the concrete trucks there, right? The concrete mixer. I'm like, are they mixing the food in there, or what are they doing with
Maybe
it?
they're cutting it with concrete to make it last long. I mean,
it might be.
They had turpentine and water, and they were like, "This looks pretty good to me."
Drink it up, Bill.
Why did Costner, when he was doing the Shakespeare, when the lady was prompting him, change the?
I don't know. Maybe he dumbed it down because he thought the people, or he didn't know it.
He just was being obstinate.
I think he didn't know it. It almost seemed like he didn't know it, because I think it gets alluded. Right. It gets alluded to that a couple times, I think, because what was the guy that came up and said, "I thought I was a bad actor, but you."
That's right.
But I think he had a great line though. He said, "How much did you pay to get into this?" That's what I thought.
That's right. It was
my
free.
food.
That's true. And I thought it was a nice touch too, that when he's abducted and essentially introduced to Bethlehem, who's played by Will Patton, the leader of this army for the first time, that Shakespeare is their little first point of connection between the two of them, right? And the quotes that Bethlehem, the kind of the warmongering side of Shakespeare, and then the quotes that he gave, out of Hamlet and such, I thought was a really nice contrast between the two of them, and really established who they were. and made it a good touch point for later on. There were 3 actors that I want to bring up here real quick because we kind of only see them in this first section of the movie and they're all gone. The first is James Russo. James Russo played Bethlehem II, that super racist, lieutenant or whatever.
And meets the lion.
Yeah, the guy that ends up getting eaten by a lion. That's right.
Oh, I thought he found him, and then found the lion.
He was awful. But I mean, in a complimentary way, as an actor.
He played it perfect. He played it perfect.
He played a perfect, terrible person.
Yeah. So kudos to James Russo. Great performance. What did you guys think? So, do you know who Giovanni Ribisi is? Which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
He was the kind of slow kid.
Boiler Room.
Oh, the kid I always saw, he was like just hopped up on drugs or something. That kid.
Something that
he just wanted to belong. He's like, my army.
That he gave the donkey meat to, or donkey concrete, or whatever.
Yeah,
the doncrete. We're just gonna call it doncrete.
There you go.
He's like, this is good. I don't know. I couldn't. Something about like when somebody's mouth is full of spit and saliva really grosses me out. And so even when he kind of half opened his mouth, there was like a webbing of salt. I'm like, bro. I mean, from an acting standpoint, great choice. I can't even look at.
He played it pretty well. I thought. I'm like, man, where'd you? That's a story I'd like to follow up. What were you doing?
What was his
you
story?
come in like you're all hopped up on drugs or got hit in the head too many times or something.
Yes, he was great, and he plays little characters like that in kind of movies all the time. He was the medic in Saving Private Ryan.
Okay. Oh, I thought I knew him from somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy that ended up getting dosed with his own morphine because he was shot up. Yeah.
I cannot fathom how much. Like every role this guy's in, I can't think of a role that he played that he didn't do a great job.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where he wasn't. Yeah.
Well,
I've never seen him in background. You know,
he's a great character actor because not like Ryan Reynolds who plays himself in every movie. Right. It's the same personality, the same guy. Sure. Costner is kind of close to the same thing, right? But this guy's more of a chameleon. And in another case in this movie, just great job playing this part. The other guy being Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson played Woody. Yeah. Fantastic little arc for him. They planted that seed when you watched him with the Shakespeare stuff, right? Which
was sitting there thinking. Yeah. You could tell. I'm like, I want to keep my eye on him and see where this goes. Is he going to be someone that's all along, the storyline here, or what happens with him?
Is Woody the kid that comes to be the postal service?
No, Woody's the guy that's fascinated with the line of dialogue from Shakespeare. At least we'll die with the harness off our back.
Right. Yeah, the big guy.
The big guy. The big guy. And it just from a writing standpoint. In that case, they completed his entire arc in only the first part of the movie because his character came around. But those kind of payoffs, I mean, that kind of writing, I love that stuff. That was really, really well done by Brian and Eric. Good job to you guys. All right. What did you guys think about the little movie nights they have in the Army?
I would rather watch Sound of Music versus Universal Soldiers.
No, come on.
I was like, where did they get the power to run this thing?
Yes.
Well, they were
that's a good question.
That's a great question.
There's a couple of those scenes.
And I'm like, the other one maybe we'll get to later or not. But the Foster's Freeze where they're all hanging out in Pineview Pineview was in Pineview. They're all hanging out there. And it's like, where are they getting these color change lights from?
They do have the Christmas lights and stuff up there. Yeah,
but I'm like the movies. So the movies, I'm like, okay, so they're watching here in whatever gorge they're in here and. I like it when they get mad. He tries to put on. It is Dolph Lundgren after all, but
right.
They get mad. And
tread lightly.
I don't mind.
He is a Swedish treasure.
I don't mind some Dolph Lundgren, some others, but it's like they start pelting the thing with rocks. I'm like.
I like that.
Do you think it's just because they live in a world of guns and violence that they just are not interested in watching?
That or they like Julie Andrews? I don't know.
You know what? I'm not going to discount the Julie Andrews effect.
Maybe they like the Nazis chasing them out of Austria. That could be.
That could be.
That
oh, they'll watch it and cheer for the Nazis.
Cheer for Dolph. Go, Dolph, go. Get rid of them peace-loving non-Nazis.
Oh, my gosh. But you bunch of babies!
Yeah, exactly.
Is this what you want?
Get them singers.
And like they can see him through the little slit either. He's like freaking out. And it's,
right, they're pelting his thing with
He's out in the middle
rocks.
of this lake, and they're pelting him with rocks from all over, hundreds of feet away, and he's yelling at him.
So you would pick which out of the two, if you were a Holnist soldier?
Oh, I'd totally pick Sound of Music.
What about you?
I'm probably sticking with Dolph because it seemed like they watch Sound of Music every night.
How about you?
Here's the jam. I got to put myself in that position.
Okay.
They are living Universal Soldier.
That's true.
So therefore, the contrast, the way it was,
That's what I would think too. The beautiful hills and the greenery. They live in a quarry.
Yeah.
you know what? You're all bringing up points that I hadn't considered, right? Considering not just the lifestyle, but the world that they lived in.
Well, think about where the world they came from, too. This is 13, and probably the world that died around the time we graduated high school.
Right.
So they're getting there at that point over that arc of 15 years or so. I mean, some of these guys are, in their mid-20s? So they were children. They never saw.
Yeah, some of them don't remember. Lived, some have those memories.
Yeah, they've only lived this crummy existence versus, hey, look at how great that is.
I think Abby mentions that to him at one point, right? She reminds the postman later on in the movie that these people don't have the memories.
Right. Yeah, they do not have your memories. Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually we kind of dig more into what life in the army is like, and they all get their initiation. You had mentioned it before, the branding of the 8, right? And then not Nathan Holm. That was that's not him. He's dead. Bethlehem introduces them to the Law of 8.
Yes.
In the worst game of musical chairs ever.
Right.
Like, it was just,
there's no place to sit.
There's no place to sit.
You had a chance. You could have sat on the floor.
Yeah.
I just said sit. I didn't say where.
Yeah, right. And so
my thing on guys like him.
Yeah.
Like, they watch him slice this dude's head off practically. Mm-hmm. Is it just fear that makes them loyal to him? Because it doesn't seem like he's offering him a whole lot else other than the fear. But then he doesn't seem quite fearful enough to keep it all. I don't know. Like,
I think he's super intimidating.
I think it's belonging. I think it's the fear. You've got the fear and the belonging because it's the clan.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And Kevin hit on that later too. Is like, man, I should have challenged you at the beginning. But you seem so strong. This, that, the other thing. Like at the very last scene, they put together stuff that you were thinking is like legitimately so intimidating, imposing. Because think about the arc time of this movie was probably at least like for the whole thing, at least 2 years, maybe longer, long enough to forget somebody like that.
Yep.
Right. And then 9 months of a child born. But like legitimately, you sit down and you have, I can't think of the word, you're enslaved basically into this army. But you're living in a world where you don't have anything anyway, and you're worried constantly that you're going to be the next one enslaved when the army comes. So would you rather not belong to it than sit there in fear that you're going to have to go to it? I mean,
if they're feeding me concrete donkey meat, I might be.
But what else are they eating?
You're getting fed. I mean, you're going to town.
Exactly.
They're getting supplies.
They're getting terrible, though. They seem like they had it together for the most part within the walls.
And then I go back to the druggy kid that he I think he even said it. I just wanted to belong to something. I want to belong here. Right.
And when he kills him, he says, "Why'd you ruin this for me?"
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you got the fear. Definitely the fear. Right. He's just stringing people.
But, and I can't remember what the line I was sitting here trying to think of it, but he says something to them at that point. He says, I choose terror over I can't remember what it is, but right at that scene where he kills the guy that didn't sit down, he kind of speaks to what you're saying, right? Terror over, well, if you guys are listening and you remember, send it in because I don't remember.
It's somewhere in the second hour.
Somewhere in the second hour. Yeah. And so we get this idea of just what it means to be a member of this army. And he even brings in, and I don't know if he identified him as someone that could be a potential leader or an officer or what, but he pulls him in for a side conversation.
Right.
That's the vibe I got when he did that.
Yeah.
Right.
As he says, you're a dangerous man, right?
Yep.
You're a fighter.
Yep.
And I don't know if James Russo's character noticed that too, because he saw him eyeballing Bethlehem, talking about why nobody challenges. He came up and told that story about Colonel Getty.
Yeah, right. He said, you got a smart mouth, Shakespeare.
Right. And that fight lasted 6 seconds, and he lost his balls and his tongue.
Right.
So that helps maybe keep people enslaved.
Yeah, that does. Now that you mention it, that would be kind of a
little bit of a deterrent.
Deterrence. So,
but I think he was waiting for the chance for someone to overthrow him the whole time.
I think he wanted it.
Yeah,
he almost seemed to be.
He was bored.
Yeah,
he was bored.
Yeah, he was goading him into it.
Yeah. And again, we'll go all the way back to that last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Are they surrendering? God, I hope not.
Right.
Yeah. Right. That's one of the best lines he has in the movie. He even says
somebody with the balls to bring the fight to me.
Right. He said, great leaders in war are made by the people they go against. Right. He said, Grant had Lee, Patton had Rommel, right, all that stuff, and I get you. Yeah. Right. He wanted, I think, somebody.
I think he wanted conflict. I think he was getting bored. Right. He's getting bored going town to town.
What am I going to do with this army? God. I need to kill some of these guys. They're getting expensive to feed.
Because right now, all they're doing is just chasing.
Towns are running out of food.
They're just chasing lions around and stuff like that, which is.
Well, my other huge question I have was, horses take a lot to keep alive, right?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
How did they keep all those horses alive?
Dude, there were a lot of horses at that last battle.
A lot of horses.
You feed them other horses. I don't know.
That's how you get.
That's how they
There
got
wasn't much grass. I
That's
mean,
right. They ate a horse and they were in the cabin.
They lived.
I guess they were taking foodstuffs from the townspeople.
They were.
Yeah.
My wife thought for a moment the movie was going to be Bug's Life with Hopper and his.
That's a totally different version of this movie. I guess they could have cut it that way.
Better version, I think. Sorry.
So they use this mission to go get this lion, which again, I was also really confused at first. I was like, lions in Oregon? And thank goodness they threw that line about.
They did throw the line.
Yeah.
And think about it. I guess if civilization did fall, there'd be all kinds of animals free from all over the place. Right? A whole invasive species of all kinds that aren't supposed to be in America. And they were. And he essentially uses this to affect his escape. He murders the soldier, Giovanni Ribisi's character that comes to find him. And then Woody gets killed when
I think murder is a strong word.
he stabbed him right in the stomach when the guy was
really murder.
He just turned. All he did is yell, "Hey, I found him!" And then he just.
Is there murder in war?
Yeah.
All right, maybe murder's not.
It's every man for himself at that point, I think.
I didn't mean that in a judgmental way.
No.
I just meant he kills this guy.
Kills the guy.
And then Woody gets killed, getting his back by
I think
attacking Russo.
Woody did well there, I think.
Yeah.
The knife fight, not the greatest knife fight in the world by far. Was it by design? Maybe,
Yeah.
It was better than that.
The time cop knife fight was ridiculous.
Well, I mean, half of that knife fight was great.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the fact that these are all pretty normal guys doing stuff, right? So there's no like super soldiers here. There's
no universal soldiers.
That's how a knife fight probably does go in real life.
So let's move on to section 2. He escapes the army and is freezing and dying probably of exposure, and he finds a mail truck.
Yeah. I don't understand the mail truck.
Why not? It's crashed down a ravine, and it would have been
but
there.
Again, the whole time thing, like, does it just... Like, all of a sudden, it's society's completely done in, like, one day. That the mail guy doesn't get out and go home and, like, oh, man, I crashed the mail truck, and why is the world ending?
He could have died in the car, actually.
Died in the car. Well, did somebody come looking for it? I mean, like, how does the end of the world happen
when the EMP went off?
It'd have to happen so fast that there's an intact mail truck full of mail with a mailman on the side of the road.
Dead. Down the hill.
Down the hill.
Yeah.
But, like, legitimately, you're led to believe that he is still running. Like, he's wet, and it's crummy out, and he's, like, shivering and dying. He's cold. Right. You're led to believe by the timeline that legitimately he's just still barely escaping the people, but then he's got enough time to set up camp, put a fire in there, warm up.
That's what I was wondering about
the next moment, he's eating something. What the F is he eating if this is still the same 10 minutes since he escaped?
Yeah, no. What's he drinking? He finds a flask on the mail guy.
So that would still be good.
Alcohol.
Well, it depends what's in there.
Right? The mail guy had some.
He didn't care.
Beef jerky.
I'm sure.
Well, that's probably how the mail guy died, drinking and driving.
That's exactly it.
That's how he got.
Well, we figured out.
All right, we know how the mail guy died.
He's eating the mailman's whiskey, drinking his whiskey, and eating his fruit snacks.
That's right.
Must have had some jerky on him or something.
Well, maybe he had Twinkies. I mean, those things will last forever.
That's what they say, right?
And maybe I'm just a big softie because the two things that made me the most sad in this movie were Bill, number one, which we already said, and the little tooth that the grandson had sent in the mail. And I'm like, here's this kid's tooth, and he was just trying to get it to his grandpa so his grandpa could see it.
Well, and here's another character arc, like part of Costner's character arc. He actually has one.
Yeah.
But like this is part of it. It's like, okay, he starts out with this thespian roaming, just trying to stay alive. He is cowardly. Mm-hmm. He's just going to slink off into the back instead of sitting here trying to get picked up. He gets picked up. Then he's like, all right, cool. He's intelligent, goes through. But now he's just trying to stay alive again. He's back to that same spot, and he's reading the mail and joking and shutting around with himself and everything just to pass the time. Then he reads this letter about the kid. Grandpa lost my tooth. When he pours it out and gets the tooth, there's like a light in his eye that changes. Yeah. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I got to stop I got to do something more with this.
Was that the moment though? Because he still was trying to which I will say is a brilliant plan that he came up with to get into a town and get some food. Using a bag of mail. Right. I was like, that was genius.
I would kick it forward a little bit to after he left Pineview.
Yeah, before
I think he got the idea from the tooth to go to the mail.
To do the con.
This for something. Because people, that was the moment where he got that people are expecting this.
Yeah. This is a question that I had for you guys. I'm going to ask each of you directly here because for those of you that are listening, he finds this mail truck. He uses the mailman's clothes, which, by the way, a body decomposed down to its skeleton inside those clothes.
That uniform looked good.
It did. And that uniform, after that long, probably would be just as decomposed.
Yeah. But well, anyway, that's a thing for, just as an
polyester
what that thing smell like?
Just as an aside. That's what I'm saying.
Postal garments, right?
That's what I'm saying. What did it smell? A body decomposed inside of it. But that's an aside anyway. But he takes this bag of mail to this nearby settlement, which is Pine View. And he's using mail like this con of, I'm a mailman.
Yeah.
The post office has been restored. And I'm coming in, and here I am to deliver the mail.
Fortunately, after really the third message, you found somebody who's actually alive, and that's enough to, fine.
And by the way, before I get to my question, I have one other thing I want to ask you guys. So I guess this is 2 questions. Would any of you believed him standing outside? He seemed like, bro, get your speech ready before you go over there, right?
Sketchy and shady. I'm done talking to you, pal.
He's like, all he needed on there was like that's the ticket at the end, right? Like the guy, like John Lovitz's character from SNL. Like, that's how obvious he was lying, to me. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, it was, have your stump speech ready there, buddy.
Exactly.
Well, the only thing that really saved him was the mail.
Right. Well, the mail ultimately.
He came up with the right.
Got the
name and address.
He was under a gun.
Yes, and so the people let him in because he ends up calling out the right name. They almost shot him. Count of 3.
Sheriff
he was on
was
3.
about ready.
They were well after 3. Sheriff gave him 3:45. Wait, what?
Sheriff at least gave him to 5.
Yeah,
I think.
And so he gets in. But here's my question I had for you guys: at what point do you think it switched for him from a con to a real movement?
The old lady.
After he was shot.
So you think it was the old lady?
No.
When Irene grabbed his hands and said, "You're going to do the right thing."
I don't think so yet.
So I think he was about to. I think she even knew he was about to admit that this is just kind of BS. And she grabbed him and stopped him and said, "You're going to do the right thing." Right? The sheriff was on
to him even before he left.
After Pineview, he went to a town and gave the mail.
Right. But so I'm saying, at what point did that happen?
Go to the next place to get some more meals.
Yeah.
But legitimately, he used that whole thing to, it must be the uniform. He was, not only did he find a place to eat, he got treated well by everybody. He got treated very well by somebody.
Became a body father.
And so legitimately he is still, at this point, I believe he is still using this. It isn't until after he meets Ford again, after their time off for the winter, that he's like, holy cow, this actually started something. I don't think he knew he started something.
So you don't think it was when he swore Ford in, when he was still in the town?
I think that was still just his exit.
He was still just trying to get out?
I think,
you might be right,
nothing's going with this.
It was pretty selfish.
He was going to want to stay at that cabin the rest of his life.
Right. Yeah, I think it was after they burned the cabin down.
And then he has to go back.
One more time, it could have been.
Really are weird.
Yeah.
So you guys all seem to think it was after the cabin. What about when the sheriff rides out and hands him that letter?
I think maybe that sparks something, but I don't know at that point if he had any intention of coming back at that point.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, yeah,
that's fair. But that was a big moment, I thought. The sheriff had been the whole time been like, "You're a con man."
He told him,
get out of here.
He told him, okay, if you are who you say you are.
Right.
It's definitely true. Ford Lincoln Mercury is the one that started the Postal Service.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you.
He's the driver
thank you.
of the Postal Service.
Right.
He is the driver. He got to drive.
Yeah.
Should there be a statue of Ford Lincoln Mercury instead of the postman? Because he put in some work while he was in the
Ford
woods.
Lincoln Mercury was the post office.
He didn't have a camera crew there when the little boy held up the letter, though.
Right. That was amazing. Because nobody would have seen that moment. And
I'm assuming the little boy told the story, and that's how it ended up with the thing.
Here's my other problem with some of this stuff.
Okay.
That woman and that little kid seemed to be living a pretty nice life out in the middle of the prairie with no Holness issues.
Well, people did that back in the day.
Yeah, but Holness is running around. Were they not causing?
Okay, but it's one
town though.
They weren't in a town. They were just somewhere else.
They were just.
They would have gone by that road. I would have thought.
I would think Holness.
Who knows where that road is? It could be back on somebody's property. I mean, if the army doesn't happen to, it can't cover everywhere.
Yeah, they're gonna, and they march. I mean, they march like old time armies marched, right? Like in the lines and everything else. So I think if unless that road is like a main road going somewhere.
My other question is, how did cops see the little kids that came out after he rode by?
Well, he just felt him. He's the postman. He's Charles.
Gotcha.
This is important.
Supernatural abilities of post.
He's like a superhero. He put on that costume and he's like a superhero.
They gave him that new uniform and he got a whole new spirit with it.
So we're gonna go back to Pineview for a second because we brought up something and we kind of skipped over it. But 2 things that I want to point out. One, I love that when he tells them that the Congress is back together and he uses a bunch of Beatles references like Richard Starkey
Richard Starkey. Richard Starkey, I learned, is Ringo Starr's real name.
Right. And then he quotes a Beatles song as like,
song.
yeah,
Stuff's
exactly, all that
getting
stuff,
better.
which
Yep.
is funny. But there's a guy then in the background that goes, is he a Republican or a Democrat?
Yeah.
And I'm like, even in the end of the world, there's still that guy that wants to know if he's a Republican or Democrat. I'm like, somebody smack that guy in the back, please. Honestly, that was hilarious to me.
They did away with parties. So basically, we're alluding to there is a uniparty then.
Right. I just love that, like, given everything that had happened, that's what that guy wanted
he
to
wanted
know.
to know. He's like,
Important information.
Right.
Here.
I'm eating horse every day, but, I want to know.
as if that was going to determine whether Kevin Costner got to stay and eat or not.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You have the wrong answer. You're gone, buddy.
Well, he needed to decide whether he was with this army here. Was he Holnists or was he going for this new
Well,
US?
it all boils down to what color team are you on, right?
Yeah.
Are you on the orange team,
It wasn't
the
the
red team, blue
Packers
team?
this week, though. I'll tell you what, huh, James?
All right. Look, by the time this comes out, no one's going to know what you're talking
But
about.
we're gonna
Depends what
know.
happens
You and
next
me.
week.
Okay.
We're gonna know.
That was a rough game.
It was. And also, while he was in Pineview, as you all mentioned, maybe the most awkward first date of all time. Right?
Yeah.
Which
You have the bad mumps.
I know she's just like kind of like looking at him, like
Sniffing
feeling him.
I'm like, it's just like Joe Biden before Joe Biden, just sniffing them. Like, do you have the bad mumps?
Right. And
Syphilis?
at this point, you don't know she's married, right? So I'm like, well, she's just straight to the point, isn't she?
Well,
It's like-
I mean, they're out in the middle of nowhere. They're dressed like it's the 1850s. I
Right.
mean, they're within these walls. It's like, we got a stranger coming in town.
Yeah. I think it was a super awkward scenario
In general.
in general.
It
all the
really
way
was.
across. And then it was played even more awkward than it needed to be.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then, but I still found.
As soon as I saw Olivia Williams, I realized why I liked this movie.
Oh yeah, that's why I like this
texted
movie.
James immediately and says, Olivia Williams is in this movie. This is why I like it.
But the guy that played her husband, I thought, even though he was only in like 2 scenes, Michael did just enough to be really.
He's a really good actor.
Yes.
I
Very
think Charles
sympathetic
Eston.
character.
Charles Eston, that's his name.
He's because I'm
Charles
big into music. Sidebar here, but big into music. He was fantastic in that series Nashville.
Oh yeah,
Deacon Claiborne. I mean, he was fantastic. He's and I forget he's been in other things I've seen.
big into
but he's
music
always
and
been-
he's in a lot of Costner movies actually.
Is he?
Yeah. So Costner put him in 13.
I like all music.
Is that about country music?
Nashville is but
Yeah.
So there's
Can I just say, Pineview's band was phenomenal?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Seriously. Like
They sing that
How'd those guitars
Come Get Your
and
Love,
everything
right?
stay? Yeah. They had like guitars and
Well,
did.
you'd still be able to make that stuff.
the lights. I'm surprised they didn't still have a disco ball in it.
The reason I brought up Michael, the husband of Abby, is that this was kind of the first point. I mean, he'd already cut that guy's head off and done some horrible things, but this was the first point in the movie where Bethlehem as a character had my blood boiling,
Right.
which is when he said, "Bring me that woman."
Right.
Right. Well, and at that point, I get like, okay, this Michael guy has been useful, to him.
Right.
So, okay, he's Bethlehem's one of some potentially somewhat useful. Like you did what I told you to do. You burned
becomes
the
a
flag.
Bethlehem
you
guy.
burned down the
Yeah.
thing, and like, all right, you're one of mine. That's cool. We can dig this. All right, bring me that woman. That's one. Like, okay, I can understand that comment coming from a guy. It's like, okay, but like, hold on a second. That's my wife. It's like, well, as a feudal lord,
Yeah.
I have the right to.
And he
your
just kind
wife
of
on the
gets
wedding
up
night.
right in his ear and kind of like is intensely whispering to him, like,
Yeah.
"Don't make this an issue."
Right, you
Like,
could be why put a blemish on an otherwise perfect record?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was a really ominous,
It was.
terrible scene.
And so kudos to Michael
Yes.
for saying you can't.
Because,
Right.
and I think that was like the turning point too. Because up until that point, he was just like knocking off army guys, right?
Right.
It's just okay, you're weak, you can't be here. And that was a point where it's like, okay, now he starts knocking off the citizenry, right?
And specifically so he could sleep with somebody's wife.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Attempt to.
So
Right. Which we find out later was more attempt to.
Yeah, I got some for that one. Yeah.
Nothing made me happier than when I found out he couldn't perform.
You know what I thought about? I'm
well,
like,
think about it.
that's what I was
Pfizer
gonna
stuff
say.
came out after '97, so it wasn't even there because that happened when I was at Abbott Laboratories. So that was like not a thing yet.
Poor
It's
guy.
like there's no Viagra in
Well, it didn't exist in
In the
97
apocalypse?
when they wrote the
That's
movie
true.
or when
Yeah.
they put the movie
That's right.
out.
But he was bad to
If the world had held on for a few more years.
bathtub commercials.
What'd you say, Charles?
He was really bad to her, though. He beat her up. So.
He did.
Yeah,
well,
he
right,
did.
because he took it out on her, right?
Well, it was her fault.
Right. Of course it is. Must be her fault. Definitely not him. But yeah, that was a good blood boiling moment, and which anything in any movie with a good villain needs, right? Those moments where you're like, I'm ready to jump through the television and fight this guy myself, and that for me was that moment. Yeah,
because at that point I'm like, I was kind of digging his character still, right? I'm like, oh, he's kind of a dick, but
Dad,
right?
Yeah, he's not knocking.
He's trying to take control of a situation.
Right. And, he's okay. We're filling a power vacuum, and it's at that point, it's like, okay,
he's doing this wrong. He might be doing this wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that. So Kevin leaves Pineview and he goes to this other town, which for all of our Spaceball fans out there was mayored by Colonel Sanders from Spaceballs, was the guy that played. That's who the guy was.
I know that guy's familiar.
Where his whole town got obliterated when they showed up. He said, these people survived the bugs, the riots, and 3-year winter, but they're not going to survive you. Yep. Right? When the postman comes out to talk to Bethlehem.
And what a bold choice, too. The postman comes out to talk to him, and he doesn't recognize him. That's where this time thing. So, I mean, how long does it take you to forget somebody?
Well, he's shaved. He's shaved. He's dressed differently.
His hair looks perfect.
And on top of that, how much was the guy really like looking him in the eye and all of that? And,
Sure.
And
he was painting.
How many guys does he see and talk to on a daily basis?
That's true.
Although, how many guys escape by jumping off a bridge and going down a river?
But he had a beard.
One question I had on that is, why did Costner swim?
I think you'd be surprised.
Why didn't he just act like he had died and just float away? They wouldn't have thought he was alive.
Well, they would have probably shot at him anyway.
Yeah, they were still shooting at him.
Just to make sure. The bullets don't go through water very well.
No, but he was kind of on the surface.
So. Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think it's plausible that he didn't recognize him, although he probably should have.
It does bring into account the time, right? How long he shaved, different clothes, found some hair products somewhere.
Yeah, and I love that Bethlehem didn't believe him at all about the restored United States, right? And that's when he told them that the capital was in the Metrodome.
Yeah.
Where the Vikings used to play.
Right.
But the major problem with that for this story itself is the Metrodome is one of those buildings that has to always have air.
Yes.
Yep.
And so if EMPs and electricity is gone, the Metrodome would collapse.
It would be collapsed,
So it was a poor choice of wording all the way around.
Oh, man, he wasn't a football fan.
Yeah.
I was gonna say too, looking at it, that where they obliterated that town, I'm wondering where did all this artillery come from all of a sudden?
Well,
they had the big guns they wheeled out.
Yeah, were they?
Right. They left. That's what I said earlier. These must have been the military people who salvaged what was left after that last battle, where obviously the United States government would have EMP'd everything to stop whatever they had to give it a shot at. Let's fight for fight. But yeah, these guys had still whatever heavy equipment was
still left. Did they hide in the woods around there or what? Because all of a sudden it just kind of
back
appeared.
at their base camp. I'm sure that they came to this town, and again, there's another time thing. It's like they laid siege to this town. Basically, they won't. The guy comes out to negotiate after the fact.
Right.
So this has got to be some time, at least hours, if not.
They went out specifically to go find the guy. Remember he said they better find him west, or whatever.
Yeah. But they found this place and then they sieged the town.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so I think this is where maybe Costner's guilt started, right? When he said that line to him, like, they survived all of this and they're not going to survive you. And all these people start dying because of him. Right. Maybe that's why he just wants to sit in the cabin then after that, because right after this is when he gets shot. And during the escape, which is actually perpetrated more by Abby than anybody.
Yes, absolutely. He was literally going to stand there and die.
And so she saves his life, and they ride off and end up being pursued somewhat, but not really that vehemently.
She is a fantastic shot.
Yeah.
Yes.
For about 3 shots, and then the other 27 are absolute failure.
Well, that's because Bethlehem has plot armor. So
plot armor.
That's right. He has to because he went and hid behind empty metal drums.
I saw that too, and the bullets are going through it too.
Like,
do they just stop? What happens here? Because he would have been full of holes behind them drums.
Here leads us to another thing. In a scene later, he's shot, his arm is in a sling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Kevin Costner's gut wound healed faster.
I guess.
Apparently.
He was laying around that cabin a long time. She was getting on his
I understand that, but I'm saying his arm isn't better yet, but his gut wound is better.
Yeah.
But then his arm is fine later, so it healed.
Who
but
knows?
The timing of the healing is odd.
I think this is the section that, if we're going to talk about a part of the movie that could have been cut down, I think this is the time. So he gets shot and they end up kind of finding this cabin in the woods. And they stay there long enough where it's now winter.
Yeah.
Or winter kind of starts as they're traveling.
Right.
And then they stay there till spring, it seems like, right?
And that's what made me wonder, okay, he ends up with like a 4-month beard again, a time thing, right? How you knew she was pregnant when
Right.
When he left Pineview the first time around.
Right.
By my count, this is like a year in.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
No, it couldn't have been.
and we also seem at
It was-
this point
it was
that she
a year
had
or
been
not.
with Bethlehem for a while during
Exactly,
that as well.
right.
So
A
how
year,
long was
yeah,
that?
a year or not. It was certainly long enough that she should have been showing by the time they were leaving the
some
cabin.
Showing at a minimum.
Did she
Yeah.
ever show in the
Absolutely.
movie?
No,
I don't think she ever
they
shows
never
one.
shot her
No.
showing. They may have dressed her here or there, but there was never like a big
Yeah.
shot of her straight forward that she
Yeah.
ever showed.
Yeah, but they spent a lot of time in that cabin. I think if you're going to, and I think and I was saying this to you before, I think the right length of this movie is probably still 3 hours. Maybe it's a matter of just cutting down this part and adding some to the recruiting thing at the end, and
what's
then we
weird
still
about
at 3
that
hours.
is they don't really fall in love in the cabin.
No,
No.
but some of this shows to the point where she obviously can't trust him. She's got to the point
No.
where she knows that he's not who he says he is.
Right.
And she is a
Well, she sees the
strong-
brand on his arm.
Yeah, she is a
Yeah.
strong, capable
Right.
woman, taking care of everything, taking care of the whole thing, and she's there long enough to realize that he's lazy, full of shit, and just will not get up and do stuff for himself
Right.
to where
Yeah.
she makes him. Now, he hasn't walked in 4 months. You would assume there'd be some type of atrophy going on here, yet she's now...
She alludes to it.
She's
Right.
now completely fine and jumps in the river, and as I assume, the cold water makes her unable to get out of it. But to save her life, he jumps into the
yeah.
same friggin' cold
All of a
water.
sudden, he can move.
He can move. Yeah, I thought that too. I'm like, wow.
It's like, wouldn't he be just as debilitated by the cold water
the
as
main
her?
line he
would
says
think.
during that whole 4 months is, "You're weird."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind
Twice.
of becomes his catchphrase.
You really are weird, lady.
I think the reason that she's hesitant pretty much almost till the end of the movie, hesitant to go back to him, or, at least emotionally. I think it has less to do with the fact that she discovers he's part of the army, of the Holnists, and more to do with guilt over her husband. And,
Yes.
Yeah, I
and
think
that
so.
I think it was more about the loss of her husband and that she had just consummated this relationship with him,
Well,
and then he
Well,
gets
but the
killed.
We
husband
can
was
go back-
involved with the-
We can
I
go
understand
back
that,
to
but still, like, now here you are with that guy,
Yeah.
and your husband was killed, and I think that's
Let's go back to that a little bit too. I wanted to talk about it earlier, and I kind
Yeah.
of forgot. But like, legitimately, the scene of that is way more romantic than that situation would have ever
I
been.
think so too. Yeah.
I think that would have
he
been
says
more
I
of a
would.
clinical.
That's what he
deal
says,
for
though.
her.
Right.
He says you probably want to keep things clinical, and she doesn't
Right.
really answer him.
But then it definitely she goes the other way on that
Clinical,
one.
Yeah.
And she left a little ribbon behind and
That's why I
everything
liked
too.
this
So
movie back in the day.
That's
Yeah,
I have said that about every movie that was absolutely trash, but had a little of that going.
I know
on.
you've complained almost every episode. He complains when something like that is about to happen and it doesn't, and I'm like, well, Clint will be happy when I saw this.
Hey, all right.
And I had just seen her. She's one of my favorite characters in Rushmore.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right.
This
She's
is
in
right
that
after
too.
she did Rushmore during
That's right.
the same time frame.
So essentially, they finally escape the woods, and this is where they're now traveling together, at least not together as a couple, but just until they can find a safe place for her to have the baby. And they realize they run into a postal carrier, and
That's one of my favorite lines, by the way.
That
What's
was his
that?
daughter.
He
isn't it?
says,
Yeah.
I hate this part. When you see a stranger, do you say hi or blow their heads off?
But if you lived in the apocalypse, every
I know,
apocalypse,
I know,
Mad
it's
Max,
that's a great
all of them.
line. He's like, I hate this part. He's like, do I say hi or blow
and he
their heads
had
off?
the obligatory shotgun racking there
Yeah,
too.
right. You gotta rack the gun.
That's a great line, though.
And yeah, that is actually played by Kevin Costner's daughter.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
part.
that's one of the daughters. I saw
Yeah.
on IMDb or whatever.
Yeah,
that,
that's
these
her.
kids are in.
Yep.
And she brings them back to the post office,
Right.
Which is like this well-oiled machine already,
Yeah,
all
functioning.
done by Ford.
Lincoln
And,
Record.
and you know what I
Ford-
found funny about that whole thing is
What's
he's
that?
explaining how the operations run like it's something new.
So this is how the mail works.
But to him, it was.
It really was,
He
yeah.
invented it.
Yeah. Right.
But it was like.
But Costner
that's
could have-
actually how it happens.
Costner could have had a line,
He
right?
could have had a line there, I think, because he would have had the memory. You're right, absolutely, because it is all new to them, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
Costner could have been like, "Oh yeah, that's kind of how I used to run," and had some line that went over their head like
Something.
every other one he had.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
He's so smart.
Where was that central post office place?
Just in some
A
silo,
silo.
in
Yeah, it
some
looked like
random.
some
but it
farm.
wasn't like in Pineview or any of those.
No, it was its own thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so it wouldn't draw attention, I'm assuming. I mean, at this point, right after this, they go back to Pineview for the first time and reconnect. They deliver
that's
letters
where,
back to Irene March
That's
and
where
all
like
of
the
that.
romance thing kicks in. Right?
Well, they have
A
that.
little bit.
They have
A
that
little bit.
dance,
Steps
Other
back
weird
and-
dance.
but she still kind of rebukes him and
yeah.
And
kind of
that's the
says
thing.
no.
It seemed like it was fine and everything was cool, but when he really leans in and tries to make it it more. She's like, no.
No.
That's
It's
when
weird, though,
they put the colored lights on and the romance starts. And
his daughter played that young girl, but the young girl was like sort of interested in.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
It was weird.
Asked him to dance.
That was weird.
But like legitimately, that goes to the acting part of it. Yes, that's
Yeah.
his daughter, but honestly, as characters, that's not his daughter.
Right.
That is,
No, I know, but
that
it's
is
kinda
this
weird.
15-year-old mail carrier, and this is the postman. She's heard everything about,
Well, he
and devoted her
obviously
life
knows
to.
Right.
Right.
She didn't go on to do much acting, but she's actually a pretty well-known documentary filmmaker now.
Okay.
So she's doing well. Yeah, and this is about the point in the movie where Bethlehem starts to hunt down mail carriers.
Can
right?
I say the one other part I really liked?
Yeah, of course.
Is he's that one dam city?
Oh gosh, Elvis, Oregon.
yeah.
He's climbing the stairs. He's like huffing and puffing. And it's like stops. And
You're gonna have to get your
finally
mail
gets
down
up
there now.
Yeah. He says, "Can we add mail?"
But,
Yeah, but
you know,
you're gonna have to put your mail down there.
This isn't going to work.
the thing about that is you would figure he'd been in better shape, though, kind of roaming around for...
Yeah, right. He'd be
I don't know. He
He
didn't
should
eat
have
much.
been.
should have been out of breath.
He did lay around that cabin for 4 months. That's
You could be in pretty darn good shape and not be able to climb those friggin' stairs.
that's
Did you
true.
see that thing?
That was
At least the way they
hilarious.
shot it, them were up there.
I was expecting Ewoks when he got up.
Yeah, I think this is a good point to focus for a moment, for at least a few minutes, because we haven't talked a lot about his performance. But when Will Patton's character starts hunting down these mail carriers, right, and he's uncovering the bodies, and he has that line where he says, "Children, you brought me children. I want a man," right, And then shortly after that, where they send the bodies of the people and the truck, or Ford does, right, into the thing, and he says, "You want a war," right? And he's like, just like, I was born for it, right?
I love that.
I thought that was a great...
His performance in this movie is one of the most intense.
Yeah.
Anybody can scream, "You want war," and seem intimidating, right? But just his overall intensity,
Foaming at
He
the
hit
eyeballs.
The
even.
vein was
Like,
popping.
right?
Foaming at the mouth. Just...
Then you have the close up of him saying, "You spelled tyranny wrong."
Yeah, but that was great. What was wrong with that?
So come on, it's so stupid.
No, it was good actually.
They're showing how
intelligent guy.
Costner said the same thing.
Right, and they're showing how
But
same.
it's like this
They're
intense.
the same. That is
The same thing
parallel.
with the Shakespeare thing, that they're two sides of the same coin, right?
Right.
That both are men leading
Right.
movements, right? But just going about it totally different
One
ways.
is leading a movement because he wants to.
Yeah.
The other one
but
falls
why
into it and realizes he needs to. That's the difference.
And tries to give it away at certain points, like
Yeah.
He needs
very
to do
reluctant.
this.
Every scene that Will Patton's in, whether he's painting, whether he's giving a speech in front of his soldiers, or talking to the townspeople, every single line, I believe,
He's very good at
he tells the truth every single time he speaks, and it never seems forced or phony or anything.
No, I thought he did a fantastic job.
He wasn't a very good painter, though.
I like that was a good scene. His face when he's like,
Not even a very good painter.
That and as the door's closing, stop moving.
to himself on the mirror.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but he's fantastic, and I think it just grows and grows in intensity as it goes
Are
through.
we going
and-
to talk about Kevin Costner?
Yeah, so we can do that right now. Costner's performance, and then this is a good point to talk about in general as a writer and a director. And in this case, he did it to himself, and maybe that's why this happened, because he's the own director, right? You want to cast people and actors that you can set up for success, right? You want to put them in things that are in their wheelhouse.
Right.
And so that's why some people can be in one movie and look great, and another movie and like they're terrible, because they haven't yet understood what they can and can't do. And so Costner, like there's that line where the people in Pineview get lined up and shot when the sheriff's like, "Ride, postman, ride."
Right.
Yep.
And they're
Great line.
and they're holding him down, and he delivers this line. He says, "They're dying for it," and he tries to go for crime, but he can't quite do it because of what we did. And it's like a terrible line reading
And
from
Ford gives an
Costner.
amazing
Okay.
answer. That was really good acting on Lorenz Tate's case there.
That was right, and so it made him look even worse. Costner works.
Yeah. And I think, speaking of that, I think Tate got better as the movie went on. I thought he was a little shaky
first.
in the beginning, and it's
I
like,
think
oh,
that's
okay.
intentional. Like he was very, very reserved back. He's in town. He's in a town, and the sheriff even knows that when these guys come to town, we got to hide him because they were so against colored people in general. So I mean, like legitimately, this guy has had no exposure to really anything. So he would be, but now he's out and he's doing it. He invented this thing, and he's getting some confidence.
Yeah.
And I legitimately think that's
and that
part
could
of his
be because I thought he
arc
was
as well.
Yeah, I thought he was very. I didn't, and I think it's that, and I think maybe he didn't know how to act that kind of beginning part either, because I thought it was a little bit shaky.
Yeah.
But I think he got stronger as the movie went on.
Yeah.
And so as a contrast to that, like with Costner giving that very bad line reading when he's supposed to cry and be emotional, the moments where Costner is vintage Kevin Costner is like when he responds to that traitor that tries to, pulls the gun on him, right? And he's kind of delivers that, the general is a lunatic and that's a man and that whole thing.
Yeah.
Or any scene when he's with Abby, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That Costner can nail that all day long.
Yep.
He's
right?
he's the jokey, he's the straight. He is not the emotional.
And so when you put him in a movie like Tin Cup, when that's all he's got to do is be charismatic with the girl and make some jokes, knocks it out of the park, right? Same thing with Field of Dreams. So he just doesn't know himself well enough, or this is Oscar bait for him. I'm assuming he thought at the time that's what this was going to be, and he just couldn't quite pull it off. But there are movies where he's incredible because it's the right choice for what he can do. Does that make sense?
Who do you put in? I mean, Costner directed it, obviously, put himself there. Who do you put in that role to crush this
Easy
part?
This is 1997.
1997.
And it's somebody that can do both what Costner can do and can get emotional and believable.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson.
I was thinking Mel Gibson too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mel could have done
You see him in Ransom, like when he breaks down crying, and you see him in Braveheart, where he's just like.
Could Russell Crowe do this too?
I think maybe. I don't know. At the time, he was probably too young.
I think Russell Crowe is more. He'd have the action and all that down, but I don't know about the.
Russell Crowe can do just about everything except Les Mis.
You're right. That's another great example of setting someone up for failure.
Ever.
That wasn't Russell Crowe's fault. That was who cast him.
You can't put. Anyways, that's a different movie.
But anyway, that's a good point. That we're making the same point with Costner here, except he cast himself. So
I was thinking Mel Gibson too.
Yeah. So, but essentially what happens here is Costner disbands the carriers. He's carrying his great guilt. He's trying to ride people's routes for them, and he can't deliver it all by himself. Right. So he just says, this is over, and heads off, and then disbands everybody, and then goes to Bridgetown where he runs into a famous musician.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. I loved it.
I loved that part. I was like, I think we were talking. I said, I know this was before Lord of the Rings, but it's like he's almost coming into the Elvish kingdom. And
yes, you're right.
You got the waterfalls, and then
Tom it's Petty like a peaceful.
Tom Petty. Knows Tom Petty.
Yeah. And there were some other older people in there, so I'm like, there's got to be some other people that would have known who Tom Petty was.
There had to have been,
right? And I love how he turns it around, and he goes, "Hey, I've heard of you. You're famous.
You are.
I love that. You're the famous one."
Are you the Postman? He says, "Hey, I heard you." That was great.
And I thought sometimes they get musicians in the movie like Glenn Campbell and True Grit, where it's just like, yeesh. But I thought Tom did pretty good.
I think Tom, that was his wheelhouse. I think it was he played kind of a laid back, kind of crazy dude. I love the line. He's like,
sometimes I ride this thing for fun.
I like that. Being a city official has its perks.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. What were you saying?
I just finished watching those scenes. Yeah. Either he was acting or he was high on something.
I know he's playing himself.
Petty. No.
And so some people think, well, how hard could it be playing himself? But it's hard to act.
I'm sure it's hard.
Even when you're just playing
I love that
you.
Character. I just that it's him. It's funny that it's him. But
that he just randomly runs into a famous person. But I did like that they put it in there. Even it might have been stunt casting. But I'm assuming in the apocalypse that happens. Famous people just become regular people.
Well, and you would think a famous person would potentially take over their town that they live in. You know, it's like,
maybe
this is the guy we're going to follow because even as now we have influencers, and for whatever reason, people follow them.
Right, exactly.
Sting lives there.
That's right. That's right. So what's interesting about at this point that Costner's trying to end the war. You can't even really call it a war at this point, but he's trying to end them being hunted down. And this is when Ford is captured and about to be executed, and they realize there's postmen everywhere.
Yep. Wait, you two don't know each other?
Yeah. And he realizes this is never going to end, right, until we wipe them out.
Yep.
The Holnists, Bethlehem. They're sending everybody now to go hunt down every mail carrier. And I think this is what follows this is Costner making that realization with the help of Abby and that little kid who said, "Who's the postman?" Decides he's got to finish this fight.
Yep.
Right? And to me, it's the best acted scene is that little exchange between Abby and him right before he gets on.
Well, she was great.
The gondola or whatever you want to call the thing.
Zipline
trolley.
Yeah, zipline trolley.
And
that's exactly what it was.
And she's this is what a good actress compared to Costner do. I mean, she's just got tears coming down her face, and she says, "You hand out hope like it's candy in your pocket," right?
Yeah, she did a great job with that.
And that's really what the Postman is all about, right? It's like the mail is the mail, but he was delivering was hope, right? That we could go back to what we had.
What it was.
And And this is the part that Costner can nail, is the next line when he hands her the ribbon and he says, I like to think you left it on purpose. And that's the last thing he says to her before he gets, I'm like, that's Kevin Costner's wheelhouse right there. Nailed it. Perfect moment between the two of them. And then this is where it gets a little funny. Then we get like 20 minutes of exposition, like fast forward.
Right, it really is.
He goes off on this thing.
While he's on the zip line.
And you know he's going to recruit people.
And I want to know, did the zip line stop anywhere? They said there's like 3
Yes,
pounds this way.
How do we stop this thing?
Right.
What does he say? He says
Don't worry about the little things.
Little things.
Yeah, so essentially he's
The
going.
scene at the end where he goes flying out of the basket into like the bushes or something. That would have been awesome.
So they don't either. They didn't have money, or they realized this was going to be a 4-hour movie, and so now they choose to speed the film up, and they kind of through voiceover and through a couple of random shots, they show him recruiting people.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think a lot of the information we've been missing in this movie, they just forgot to dub the voiceover on all these other scenes that are just nothingness. Like, he legitimately rides, like, when they get together and, okay, fine, he's going to ride with the postman. And they go up and they go out and he's on his horse and they all take off and his horse spins around backwards and stuff. Yeah. There is way more than a 75-foot gap between those horses that left by the time he leaves. But he gets going through there and it is literally a 5-minute shot of him catching up and passing and them distributing.
Yes.
We didn't need that 5 minutes. It looks good.
Yeah.
It's in there. But that's 5 minutes that they could have spent with a voiceover guy giving us some information and background that we desperately deserved.
Yeah. No, it could have been like Blade Runner, where they just put a narrator. I know everybody hates the narrator in Blade Runner, but
right, and it would have been Arnold Schwarzenegger, the narrator.
Yeah, this is the postman.
We need to put him in here somewhere.
It's time to go now.
I was thinking back. You put him in back when the lion, and
I was going to say maybe
its blood was on the leaves.
Yeah,
I say we make him the actual lion. He's like, rah!
that's right. If it bleeds, we can kill it. He should have been a Holnist. That'd have been perfect. So basically, we get this fast forward, which makes it a little bit jarring, again, from a filmmaking standpoint, that all of a sudden he's got an army behind him of people. But Bethlehem, when they ride up on his army, is thrilled.
Absolutely.
He's finally getting it.
He gets a battle. He almost like wants to build his legend, right?
Right.
And so he pulls out his army. He's rolling out these artillery and all this stuff. And then Costner realizes that all these women and children that he has lined up with him are going to die.
Right.
And so he rides out.
And that Ford's going to die.
And that Ford's going to die. Brilliant. And the first time I did not see it coming. They planted that earlier brilliantly, because then you bring it back and it's like everybody just goes, oh, yeah. I invoke the law. I invoke Law 7, which is that anybody can challenge for leadership of the Klan, and like, you've got to be a member of the Klan. And he rips his sleeve.
It's impressive that he ripped that like that.
It was
a pretty heavy coat that made it through the apocalypse.
I was going to say, that is a very tough piece of clothing. And he was able to just, with one, that's his superpower.
Right.
It's tearing a male uniform.
Apocalypse Men's Warehouse or something.
That's right. Some loose stitching.
He rides showing him it. You know, that's his.
But he rides showing it to everybody.
That's his Braveheart moment.
That or his Dances with Wolves thing.
With Wolves.
And but it is a great moment, and it works. I don't want to rip on it so much. Like, it absolutely works.
Because the coat, got it.
But that moment, and this is again just comes down to Will Patton's incredible acting. You can see on his face the moment he realizes who it is. Shakespeare. Right? Yeah. Shakespeare, the one that didn't want to fight.
Yeah.
And then only because it was him, I think, he was like, all right, we're doing this.
Because he wanted to do it before when he called him in.
Yeah,
right? He was. I think he was looking for him to challenge him.
Yeah,
like I said, he was setting him up. I think. Through,
I agree.
Through some of their interactions earlier.
And so the two things that I absolutely love, they're going to settle this fight just one-on-one instead of involving the armies.
Absolutely.
The fight choreography was perfect. In that there was no fight choreography. Yeah. It was two dudes rolling around in the dirt.
I love that. They were just scrapping. Right? I mean, it was an all-out like bar fight.
Exactly. I think it's probably more accurate to how it would actually be.
Oh yeah. Well, the fight itself, but they use slow motion in a lot of weird spots.
They do.
They did.
But
that's the one thing about the fight was where they had the slow motion. I'm like, just let them go at it.
Just let them go.
But the fight was good. I agree. I liked that it was just.
They used the slow motion because both of those guys, stunt doubles, were worn out after like.
They had to replay the same shot.
We need 35 seconds, guys.
I have legitimately never been in a physical altercation except maybe when I was like in kindergarten.
If you suggest another movie,
no, I'm just
like the
curious how
last one, we're gonna have
often
it.
do guys ride towards each other on horses and lunge?
I
at each other
loved
on
that.
horses?
That was
the
good.
midair
I thought
collision.
That seems like a really great way to
I love that
start a
stuff.
fight
Yeah.
very poorly by hurting yourself significantly.
Absolutely.
I think
before
it.
even
I don't know if it was
started.
strategic. It was maybe bad strategy, like you're saying, but I think it just spoke to these guys wanted to get it on so
anger.
badly that they were just like,
This is the
"Let's
fastest
go."
way we can get
Yeah,
together.
I think it
They
was
both had that
dramatic.
idea,
Yeah,
too.
dramatic effect. They
It was
didn't have
body
the
jousting.
joust. Yeah, right. They didn't have the jousting sticks. They had. To
Hey,
use
this
each
is the
other.
same guy that wrote Knight's Tale, so
Yeah, that's true.
maybe this is just a little
That's
seed
the
that was
thing he
planted.
does. Well,
But-
it might have actually worked to Costner's advantage, or
Yeah.
whatever his name is, Postman, because General Getty or whatever, right?
Colonel Getty.
Colonel
Oh yeah,
Getty,
the
he's a
silent
big
guy.
dude. So the
Yeah.
fact that he was able to beat him in hand-to-hand combat or whatever suggests
Yeah.
that maybe Patton's a better fighter than
Yep.
that fight showed.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and then they get this kind of this
And he couldn't
final.
get his sword.
Well, Patton is winning.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at the
in
point
my
he's got
eyes.
him, and this is when he
When he had the sword.
But then he goes
delivers
into
this
Yes,
the
of
best. I mean, just
Villain's
all of his
monologue.
intensity and everything, right? And his face is beat red, and he's not even screaming, and his face is beat red, right? And he says, "You're losing because you don't care about anything,
Yeah.
you don't value anything, you don't believe in anything." And then he says, "I believe in the United States," which is a little corny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good, but coming right off of Will Patton delivering that line, I was
it
like,
was
eh.
a little weak.
Yeah, but only because of
What's it gonna say?
who he's acting against, I
You're
feel
right,
like, right?
I believe in
But just
Ford.
right up to the end, Will Patton's performance, and then he
Yeah.
gets killed
Then he gets the headbutt.
poetically
Well,
by.
and that's the thing. He headbutts him real quick, and then he just ground
Chokes
and
him,
pounds
right?
him a little bit. He's
Yeah.
choking him out, and he decides not to kill him. He's like, no, that's all right. We're gonna not kill you.
So I do have a question about the whole who actually owns the clan, though.
I think they all
Costner, or is it Colonel
Costner when
Getty?
he wins.
I think
It
Costner
shoots
owns the clan.
because before he even shot him, he
No.
stood up and was like, "I'm the leader of this
Well,
clan now."
yeah, no.
I've alluded to this before.
Yeah.
Getty puts in a ridiculously underrated performance because through this whole thing, he says not a word, but he's in pretty much every scene that Patton is in. He follows him around. He doesn't do a whole lot, but like literally the defense of the leader of the clan is 100%.
Yep.
And at the end, he holds the one guy's gun down to let Ford go out because you already know he's against Patton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he challenged for a lead.
Oh, that's right. When when Luke switches sides,
Exactly.
he stopped him from
allows
shooting him.
Luke to switch sides
Yeah.
and gets out of not Ford, Luke.
And Patton does give him kind of a look,
He
right?
gives it
He says
morale is a
dangerous thing.
dangerous thing, exactly.
Yeah.
When
And
else?
so, but like at that point, and then when he stands up, he is 100% in defense of the leader, who is Costner.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, that's true.
Well,
So
I
he was gonna
think-
kill the leader.
Yeah, I think too, though, with kind of the ending fight scene, right? I think Costner forgot kind of one important thing. If you think about when you're in kind of a war situation, is that your enemy doesn't consider him vanquished unless he
Dead.
Yeah.
dead in this case, right?
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like, well, we'll leave it. And then, yeah, let's just have peace. And the thing that struck me is like all the bobbleheads were like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Really, you've got this vicious army that Bethlehem has been pounding for
Right.
years or decades, whatever. You think it's everybody's all of a sudden, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do it. And then they're getting up to walk away. And it's poetic
Yeah.
justice, right? You think
Right.
about it makes you wonder who really had the balls there in that situation because Getty's the one that shoots him.
Yeah.
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 But
no,
I
you're
think,
right.
Kurt, to your point, it's Getty, realized that, Postman is the leader of the clan now.
Right.
He's
Yeah,
got to
that's
protect
true.
him.
Right. And so I think maybe it was a little bit faster than it would have happened in reality with the army coming around. They did have to put kind of a bow on it because it's the end of the movie.
That's where,
They got to tie it up.
We're at the
That's where-
3-hour mark.
maybe that's where
Yeah.
Game of Thrones got their idea.
Yeah, well, they needed to put a bow on theirs too, and they really fast forwarded. But speaking of fast forwarding, after all this is over, man, they put that country back together in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, what happened to that? And why'd they get rid of all their old-fashioned clothes?
I'm like, the tailors came back. We got boats in the harbor.
Well, they were all sailboats too. There was still no
No, they got a guy video recording
Yeah,
the,
they had a
the
guy
interview.
video
recording.
right, but I'm just saying there was no internal combustion or anything like that, so they were still on with the Green Deal. They
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
Maybe they just decided
maybe
to do
Santa
things
Rosa
differently.
was always
but-
that way. That's why he wanted to go there the whole time.
It's like Mackinac Island in Michigan or something. They just
Yeah.
pedal bikes everywhere.
Nice, man.
I don't know, but I'm saying they seem to be back to normal.
They
Right.
vanquished their
In 30 years.
30 years, that's all
Their
it took.
Bethlehem a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't know. And I actually love the statue. It's kind of cheesy. I'm assuming that kid told the story because he's there at the
Yeah, he
unveiling.
says
That's
that.
why
That
there's a
kid.
statue. Maybe he commissioned the statue.
He's
I don't
like,
know.
That's me.
That's me.
And I thought in that instance too was like, it almost seems like he wanted to shed a tear, but he can't.
I felt it as completely unnecessary that guy was at the unveiling and said anything at all. It took away to me.
Well, the only reason I thought maybe they put him in there was to justify how they would have known about it. You know, because like he said, there was no film crew there filming when he snatches the letter from the kid's hand.
The film crew's comment came from the film camera at the end of that movie. I was thinking about. There's a camera there.
There's a camera. Yeah. So technology is back, baby. Yeah. This is 2043 at this point, or
microphones and everything.
They got it all. But yeah, she's talking into a microphone.
Yeah.
So they put but again, that probably has more to do with they wanted a happy resolution for people. So the country's back together.
One of the things I learned is in the post-apocalyptic world, you need to invest heavily in fingerless gloves.
Yes. There was a lot of that. Well, you can invest in regular gloves and then just wear the fingers.
And there was no word about a toilet paper shortage or anything in this movie. No. So, they handled their plague a little bit better. Maybe I don't know.
This is Postal Service people,
or they had an actual plague. It could be. I wonder how Postal Service people think about this movie. You're right. The mail saves the world.
Yeah, just what I need is another bill and another piece of junk mail coming to my house to save
that. Okay, thank you, because that was my favorite thing when he's going through everybody's mail and it's all letters. I'm like, where's the you've been pre-approved for the $2,000?
Where's my 8,000 credit card applications?
We've been trying to reach you about.
Right, you'd find one letter in that bag.
Warranty.
You'd find one letter in that bag.
Well, this was the 90s.
I guess.
97. You'd find 7 letters in that bag.
All right. Well, in the interest of time, since we got maybe all of 10 minutes left to go, we got to give some awards out to this movie. We've dissected and poked this film from all different angles. Probably not every angle. We probably missed some things, but I think we did it pretty well. That we got to now give some props, give some flowers to this film, and we always do that. First off, with the Will Patton Award, which, because Will Patton is generally never the main character in any movie he's in, we generally give this to someone who's in a small role, but that was bringing the intensity. Hopefully now you see why we named this award after Will Patton, because he's not just like this in The Postman, but every movie he's in.
If you want to see him act as a good general, see Falling Skies.
Falling Skies. And remember the Titans. He's Coach Yost, right? He's very intense in that as well.
That movie's a good one.
And so who is your nomination for someone in a small role that was bringing the intensity and going 110%?
I had 2 worth mentioning and one I'm going to pick, obviously.
Okay.
But Getty is absolutely worth mentioning at the end there. Fantastic. And in everywhere, like I said, where he's at. But Ribisi. I mean, that guy was. I know you didn't like the
spit and saliva
actual action. That goes back to certain things that just.
I don't like it, but I respect it.
But it was a great performance. Every scene he was in, that kid was on fire.
Okay, fair enough. Ryan, who's your nomination?
I think if I'm looking at it, I won't give it to Bill, but I think Bill.
Oh man, yeah.
Shakespeare, he's doing.
The donkey.
The donkey.
Yes.
Donkey Crete.
Rip Bill.
He did.
I love in that.
Rest in peace, sweet prince.
Rest in peace.
To switch the sword around the right way.
Yeah,
that's a great.
I thought he was. You got the mule there, but I'm going with Tom Petty, man. I like Tom Petty as the mayor of Bridgetown.
That's respectable.
Tom Petty nailed his Tom Petty performance.
He did a Tom Petty.
100%.
He did.
That was a Tom Petty.
He did.
Piece, so I'm going Tom Petty.
That's a good pick. How about for you, Charles?
Olivia Williams.
I think she might have been in it too much, but I'll let you have it. She's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is minor character?
Yes, a small character. Tate. Lawrence Tate. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
You know who my number 1 actor is?
Lawrence Tate as a small actor as well?
Pretty small
Lorenz. I mean,
that's
huge. Probably close, but I'll allow it. He was definitely less than Olivia Williams.
All right, then I'll go with his pick, Ribisi.
That's actually who I picked as well, Giovanni Ribisi.
He was going to win anyway.
Giovanni Ribisi.
He's really good in that.
Gets 3 out of the 4, so he'll get the Will Patton Award. But yeah, he just was all in what he was doing that whole, even though he was only a part of the movie.
And I liked it. And I liked him. I thought he was great too. But
confused and you wanted it, but you're like, don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
I just want to be part of something.
Yeah.
All right, so the Trash Can Full of Dirt Award is another award we've recently started giving out. This is one for someone whose acting performance could have been replicated by a trash can full of dirt. So Clint's going to be mad at me, but I'm giving my Trash Can Full of Dirt award to Joe Santos, who played Colonel Getty, because I don't even think, even though he wasn't talking, he necessarily conveyed a lot of emotion and just kind of dead-faced it through the whole movie.
Well, I think Like I said,
That's just me.
To defend there
Yes.
at the end, those last 20 minutes,
Yeah.
he puts in a ton of speech without saying a
I
single
agree with
word.
Clint.
It's just my opinion. You don't have to agree.
I'm gonna
My,
go with,
my trash can full of dirt award goes to James Hauser for having a bad opinion.
You're right. I did nothing in this movie, so it could have a trash can of dirt.
Done.
How about for you, Charles?
That gets me out of this one.
I feel bad because she's probably a very nice girl, but Costner's daughter was not very.
Oh, I think it's Ann Costner. Is that was
Anne, yeah.
Anne.
What was her character? It's like Ponytail.
Ponytail was her
Ponytail.
She
character.
wasn't a very good actress.
No, she tried to cry at one point,
No,
and
she was bad.
It was bad. Yeah, you're right. How about for you?
Oh man, I think you pick a townsperson, really. I mean,
Colonel Sanders?
yeah. I mean, that's if we got to nail it down to one, I'll go Colonel Sanders. But I think,
How about the Republican or Democrat guy?
we could give it to that guy too. Yeah,
exactly.
we could give it to that guy.
We'll give it to him. All right, and then lastly, the last award we give out is our top 3 performances, top 3 acting performances. So we'll just go around the table real quick and give us, from 3 to 1, who are your top 3 performers in this movie? And my goodness, if we're not unanimous on number 1, I might walk out of this room.
We're
but don't
not-
take that as pressure. Just pick your.
We're not going to be unanimous, but out of a technicality. Olivia as
Is 3.
3.
Okay.
Tate Ford as 2.
Okay.
Costner's going to be my number 1. Hold on.
Is the matter with you?
Because I've got a 0.5 that was better than anything.
Oh.
Will Patton, the best in the thing. Like,
So you gave a top
better
4.
than
Got
one.
it.
Way
Okay.
better than
3.5.
1. You said 3, but it's got to be way
Okay.
better than 1.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'll cut it down to 3. I think definitely Abby, Olivia Williams.
Yes.
She's weird.
Yeah.
I think Taylor was it Tate Lorenz?
Lorenz
Lorenz
Tate.
Tate.
Yeah. Lorenz Tate.
Ford Lincoln Mercury,
Okay.
and then Will Patton's number 1. I mean,
All right.
Costner, just because I think some of the things we talked about, a little bit out of his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I might slot him in at 4. I don't think he was bad, but I
Yeah.
think there were some things out of his wheelhouse.
I agree.
I think my issue with keeping him up there high is he did direct this as well.
Yeah.
So like his involvement in this is full on directing and his acting. There may have been some downfalls in the acting, but he did a great job, I think.
Okay.
All right, I'm going Tate, Patton.
How dare
Williams.
you? You have Olivia Williams
Yes.
above Will Patton.
If Will Patton had gotten naked, would he have been higher?
Probably.
I absolutely wanted to watch Olivia Williams far more than
If
Will Patton in this movie.
I was gonna have you come back for Waterworld. I had big plans for you on this podcast.
He's second on my list. He's just
How
good.
on earth? Will Patton is my number 1. And he would be 2 and 3 if I could. But I had Olivia Williams at number 2. And I was back and forth on number 3. I did put Costner in just because he kind of has to carry the movie.
I knew I was coming
But-
on this podcast. I almost stopped watching it until Olivia Williams showed up, and I remembered she was in the movie.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
That's why I'm watching this movie.
All right, so I have one final question for you, and if you can answer this. Now that we've poked and prodded this movie, is The Postman a bad movie?
Not even slightly.
Okay.
Shouldn't be in here except for the fact that it did terribly at the box office.
Is The Postman a bad movie, Ryan?
In a sense of bad movies, no, I'd say it's an okay. Like I said, it grew on me. I think it's like Costner's okayest movie ever. Maybe.
Okay. All right, Charles, after going through it, has your opinion changed? Is this a bad movie?
Yes, because it should have been more than it was. It had everything there to be a good movie, and it's not a good movie. It's ambivalent.
I'll
How
just
can I
use
watch
his
a movie
words.
for
He says
3
it has
hours?
everything in it that it needs to be a good movie, and so therefore it is a good movie to me.
No,
to me,
it's a bad movie.
Okay, this is absolutely a good movie.
Yes.
We'll just say it's a bad movie that rules because that's what this is all about. All right, guys. Well, look, I appreciate you all joining us here this week to talk about The Postman, and I appreciate that you guys have listened. If you haven't already, follow us on our social media. You can find us at facebook.com/badmoviesrule. You can find the podcast anywhere, and if the platform that you listen to us on allows for a review, like Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. Leave us some stars, hopefully 5 of them. Write something out. It helps us get seen, or rather heard by more listeners out there, and we appreciate that you've been listening. Join us next week when we're going to be discussing our first Arnold movie yet. We've been talking about this guy in every episode, and we're finally going to talk about one of his movies. We're talking about the inferior of the 2 Conan movies that he made, Conan the Destroyer, which is actually my favorite of the 2. But not universally felt a universally felt opinion out there. But we'll get into all that next week, whether that's a bad movie or not. In the meantime, for Clint Bush, Ryan Mueller, Charles Hewitt, I'm James Hauser. Thank you for listening.
You did a great job remembering to turn that slider up before you hit the music this time.
Hey, I can be taught. It just takes me a long time. That's all.